In the last video, we discussed why you should get into the Yakuza series, and why I love the series so much. So if you haven't seen that video yet, you should go ahead and click the link in the top corner of the screen and check it out. Now that you've watched that video, you're probably wondering where should you start in this series. Well, in today's video I'll be discussing the most likely games you'll want to start with and go into the pros and cons of each. Let's start with the latest series released in the West, Yakuza Kiwami. Yakuza Kiwami is a ground-up remake of the PS2 classic in the Yakuza Zero engine, with added gameplay quirks and improved quality of life changes. Some of these changes include a much better camera system, and an all-around more tighter combat system compared to the original PS2 release. Newer fans wanting to enter the series of this entry will be able to play the original game with a much more modern feel. Yakuza Kiwami is a good starting point because at the end of the day, it's just a remake of the original game. While yes, the game does include many changes such as the Yakuza Zero combat system and the new Majima Everywhere mechanic, you still get to play the same game that started the entire series. And Yakuza Kiwami does a good job of setting up players for future games to come, and is a great example for remakes in general, as the game manages to ride a fine line between keeping to the original integrity and being a complete reimagining of the original game. Yakuza Kiwami is also good for people who are truly on the fence on whether or not they should try getting into the series. The game currently has a suggested retail price of $29.99, and you can often find the game on sale for as low as $14.99 during certain times of the year. At a price point that low for the amount of content that is offered to you, it's a deal that certainly can't be beat. It becomes the ideal gateway point for the series for players who don't want to drop $59.99 on say Yakuza Zero or Yakuza 6. So let's say you start here at Yakuza Kiwami. Where would be the next best way to go? Well, you can always go and play Yakuza Zero to get a better feel for a full Yakuza game to see everything the series has to offer, and from there your best bet is playing in release order. This is kinda where an unintended con comes in starting here, however. Yakuza 2 on the PlayStation 2 is pretty pricey, and at the time of recording this video, there were no announcements on the localization status of Yakuza Kiwami 2, so you can either play through release order or wait for Kiwami 2 news and continue on from there. Yakuza Zero acts as a prequel to the Yakuza series. In this entry, you switch between playing as Kazuma Kiryu and series mainstay Goro Majima, as you play through events of the past that influence the future of the series. Yakuza Zero is probably the best place to start in the series for many reasons. Don't let the fact that the game is a prequel turn you away. Yakuza Zero is very newcomer friendly in terms of its storytelling and gameplay. The game also gives a lot of nods to future games for longtime fans to discover as well. For example, you can run into a normal sub-story, and to a newcomer it's just an everyday thing, but to a longtime fan it's an origin story for their favorite character. This isn't a bad thing either, it just shows that the game manages to strike the right balance between being newcomer friendly and giving fans satisfaction. Another reason for Yakuza Zero being a good starting point is just how content-rich this entry is. Yakuza Zero is just filled to the brim with side content you can do alongside an already beefy story. Spend your night at hostess clubs, gambling, or at the arcade, or running your side businesses. Yakuza Zero has plenty of things for you to do. You can easily find yourself getting lost in any of the side content. As a testament to the fact, when I was about 50 hours into the game, I was only about halfway through the game's story. The amount of depth some of the side content this game has to offer is big enough to be its own game in and of itself. So you may be asking, are there any cons starting with Zero? Well, you may not fully grasp a lot of the Easter eggs for future games in this, but outside of that, I personally can't find any reason to not start here. However, if you are unsure about the series and don't want to spend the full $60 retail, your next best option is to probably start at Kiwami. So after Yakuza Zero, you may be wondering where should you go from there? Well, hopping right into Yakuza Kiwami is your best bet, as playing Kiwami right after Zero connects the two games perfectly, seeing as Yakuza Kiwami gives you a better understanding of Kiryu and Ishiki's relationship, thus giving the events of Yakuza Kiwami a much more impactful feeling. From there, you should just really play the games in release order, and substitute out games of a Kiwami variant if one exists if you do not wish to play the original release. Yakuza 6. The only reason why I'm including Yakuza 6 on this list is because this game will be dropping really soon, and I know for a fact it'll be a lot of folks' first Yakuza game, and I can't really judge anyone for starting at Yakuza 6 either. After all, I started with Yakuza 5. That being said, I thought I would list some reasons as to why starting here would be a good or potentially bad spot to start. Some people think starting at Yakuza 6 will cause a great deal of confusion. Well, thankfully, that won't be the case entirely. Yakuza 6's story is not a direct continuation of Yakuza 5's. It's actually Kazuma Kiryu's final story. Everything in this game will revolve around him, similar to that of the first 3 Yakuza games. That said, that can also be a negative. This is, after all, his final story. You will probably go into this game with pretty much zero attachment to Kiryu or his adoptive daughter Haruka, so the entire game's spot in this series may not give you the full impact versus starting elsewhere. Another strange pro to starting with Yakuza 6 is that you'll be more prepared for future games in this series. Yakuza 6 is the first game to use SEGA's new Dragon engine, and going forward with Yakuza Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 7, they will continue to use and work on the Dragon engine for these games. Starting here will help you be prepared for the future of the series with all of its remakes and new entries. Sadly, this is also a double-edged sword. For example, the other 6 games in the series do not use the Dragon engine. Yakuza Zero and Kiwami both use a newer engine with completely different fighting styles for Kiryu, while the other games use an even older engine. Starting here with this shiny new Dragon engine may make it feel a bit odd to go back and play the older games that are not all Kiwami'd. Even then, if Yakuza 3 through 5 get a Kiwami remake, in the vein of Kiwami 2, I highly doubt we'll ever see a Yakuza Zero Kiwami or a Yakuza Kiwami Kiwami. That just sounds rather weird. But alright, let's say your mind's made up and you want to start the series here on Yakuza 6. What's the best course of action? Well, if you start here, your best bet is to read through the interactive Yakuza comics that SEGA's put on their website. This will give you a nice rundown of everything that's happened in the previous 6 games. After finishing Yakuza 6, I honestly recommend jumping into either Yakuza 0 or Kiwami and playing through release order, and substituting for Kiwami entries if they're released or localized. Now that we got all of that out of the way, let's talk about one more possible starting point for the series. Now let's go back to where it all started, the original Yakuza on the PlayStation 2. There are quite a few benefits to start with the original Yakuza over the other titles mentioned. You get to see firsthand where the series started and get a feel for what the series was originally like. You also arguably get a better OST to listen to compared to the techno and synthesized renditions from the Kiwami remake. There is also this strange 2005 charm that the original Yakuza has that you can only feel when you're playing this game. Yeah, sounds a bit corny, but there is something novel about it. Sadly, that's probably where the perks of starting at the original release ends. Yakuza on the PlayStation 2 is a definition of not aging well. Even for its time, its wonky camera angles and weird combo inputs made the game feel like a really clunky beat-em-up. Thankfully, the game at the time had enough charm and good writing around it to make it one of SEGA's powerhouse series today. Another issue with starting with this one is that you have to deal with some pretty abysmal and mediocre at best voice acting.
By the way, what do you want me to do with this brick?
I didn't know he was Kazuma-san. I'm sorry.
Yeah?
I didn't know.
Forget it.
Sure, Mark Hamill's Majima is interesting, but everything else just kinda makes the game feel flat. This isn't to say a lot of the voice actors were bad, it just feels like they were given no real direction. All this said, however, if you want to play this game and get the original feel for it and the original atmosphere, then go ahead and give this one a try. It's by no means a bad game. I don't think it needs saying, but if you choose to start playing Yakuza here, first off, hats off to you, and second, your best bet is really playing through release order, or even trying out Kiwami, and see how the series has changed since 2005. At this point, the direction is really up to you. So there you go, my recommendations on where you should start in the Yakuza series. Just remember that these are just my opinions and recommendations on where to start and the pros and cons of each. Please don't see this as a de facto list of what games are the best to start with. Like I said, my first Yakuza game was Yakuza 5, so find the game you think you'd have the most fun starting with. After all of the Yakuza games have a way to use the events of previous games to catch you up to speed on the stories thus far. The Yakuza series has become a near and dear thing to me, and I hope this video was of some help to you to finding out what entry point you should start with to get in on this crazy ride. But for those of you wanting my personal preference on where to start, Yakuza Zero is the best entry. Yakuza Zero is a game I will tell anyone to start with if they ask me in person about the series, as not only does it provide a good foundation for the series as a whole, it becomes a real treat to play again once you've played through the other games and come back to it to see all the little Easter eggs and little hints you may have missed. And there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, by all means, please leave a comment down in the comment section below letting what you guys think of the series so far. And if you have any friends who want to know more about the Yakuza series and don't know which game to start, hey, send them this video, it may be of some help to them. And if you're new to my channel, finding me out just through this video right here, hey, be sure to subscribe and stick around for a while. We'll have a ton of fun here together. So be on the lookout for more reviews, commentaries, let's plays, and more. And as always everyone, thanks for watching.